Hey everybody, this is Richard and welcome to another episode of Fatal Error. This show began as a research project for me to understand how entrepreneurs and founders think about the climate emergency and figure out ways in which all organizations, not just non-profits, can become climate positive. Today's guest is Elliot Coad, co-founder and CEO of Ecologi, formerly known as Offset Earth. Ecologi plants trees in various locations around the globe, allowing its subscribers to offset their carbon footprints. In our conversation, we discuss how Ecologi got started, their growth and plans, and the challenges of running this kind of startup. Let's hear what he has to say. You're the CEO and founder of Ecologi, previously known as Offset Earth, right?
Yeah.
What's your, how would you describe yourself and the company? Just your sort of mini elevator pitch, I suppose, or business card.
Yeah. So what we're doing with Ecologi is making funding climate action really simple, really effective, and like really kind of engaging. So you want to do it, and yeah, that's what we do. We want, there's a world of opportunities to solve climate change through funding direct climate action, and we want to make that happen.
Okay. And when you say, okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. So funding climate action, what kind of climate action are you funding? Because there's a ton of stuff. Obviously, I've seen your website. I know you're focused on forestry, for example, and things like that. But is there more, or is it just that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different angles. For the most part, you come onto our platform and we compensate your entire carbon footprint based on location of yourself around the world, and we compensate your carbon footprint with kind of a big range of climate action. Where, let's say, for example, we're called Ecologi, and we really love repairing nature as well as repairing atmospheric carbon issue. And so 50% of your money goes into funding kind of natural climate solutions like reforestation, principally that, as well as protecting prime forests. And then the other side of it is split between renewable energy and kind of humanitarian projects like repairing water boreholes around kind of the planet.
Okay. And when you say renewable energy, you mean what are you doing? What are you funding there? Are you buying your own, kind of setting up your own infrastructure, or something else?
No, mercifully not. We're a very small team, and so we're just essentially facilitating we're helping you put money in the right places, essentially.
Okay.
A bit of a broker, really. Yeah, and so we'll pass your money on to projects that are operating, let's say, out of India, that are installing wind and solar arrays. In developed nations, it's self-profitable to kind of run renewable energy projects, but in developing nations they need a lot more support to become profitable. So the carbon offset market essentially kicks off as a kind of big catalyst for clean energy in lots of developing nations.
Well, what do you mean they need more support? In what sense? Is it?
Yeah,
because you say here it's profitable, but there isn't it. But it isn't. But aren't you producing the same amount of energy, right? Or
absolutely. Yeah, so the land is cheaper, so that makes the project easier to get off the ground. But the expertise tends not to be there. It is a changing picture now. Also the financing tends not to be there. There are big financial institutions. We're talking here from the UK, and it's fairly easy to kind of get a lot of money. And so the carbon offset market is a way of financing your project to kind of get it off the ground. And importantly, with the carbon offsets, that if you didn't need the carbon offset money, then that's not a carbon offset project, because you wouldn't be allowed to sell carbon offset. So you have to first of all prove your project needed the carbon offset money to kind of kickstart it. Otherwise, it's disqualified, essentially. Kind of like one of the first requirements of that.
Can you unpack that a little bit more? Because I haven't had a lot of conversation about carbon offsets and how all of that sort of market works. So let's say you want to somebody's starting something new. Or are there what qualifies or disqualifies for a project or an organization from kind of playing that game, so to speak?
Yeah. So there are a lot of there's many kind of criteria to satisfy to become a carbon offset project. But for the most part, what you got to do, let's say you've got some land and you know an engineer that could install some solar panels.
Mm-hmm.
For you to sell the carbon offsets that are generated, what I mean by generated is, let's say you did a year's worth of clean electricity generation that went into the grid, then you could say, great, I kind of, that's the equivalent of 10,000 tons of CO2 that have been avoided because that
Mm-hmm.
coal power plant didn't have to be on quite as much. So you'd have to get your project certified. And you might remember a really rocky history of carbon offsets, like investigative journalists finding out that it's just purely didn't happen or was doing more damage to the planet
Yeah.
than improving. So the certifications are kind of these independent NGOs that make sure that that doesn't happen. And so
Okay.
we only kind of support the best, so gold standard and climate community and biodiversity standard. But back to your kind of solar farm that you're just kicking
Yeah, yeah,
off.
yeah.
Yeah, so you want to essentially go, I need to prove that I need this carbon offset money. You've got to prove that you couldn't go elsewhere to say, give me some money and I'll give that back to you later. This project would never have existed without this kind of essentially donations coming from another area. So once you've proven that to the certification body, you're sort of off the ground. And then you have to, there are these kind of quite heavy methodologies where you have to prove that CO2 has been avoided. And I've looked at these sums and these kind of formula, and they are insane. But you have to mathematically prove that you're avoiding carbon compared to what's called a baseline carbon emission. And so once you've got that sorted, then you're on to the kind of the next side of it. Then you
Okay.
have to work out how you can kind of prove it. Independent auditors keep on visiting the site.
And then where does the money come from? Right. So let's say you're certified, like you get
Yeah,
sort of accepted into this gold standard, I suppose, right? Where you
yeah,
are
yeah,
actually
yeah.
eligible. What happens?
Yes. So once you're certified and you have like independent auditor come in and say you avoided 10,000 tons of CO2 last year,
Yeah.
yeah, then you go on and say you can sell your carbon offsets to a carbon offset broker. You can sell them direct. There are some really nice kind of tech platforms coming out. There are lots of brokers out there that always kind of take a few percent off each transaction. And
Mm-hmm.
so you get it up onto the market, and then you'd be able to sell to a company or an individual. Some people just want to offset their own carbon footprint. So
Okay.
some large companies like Coca-Cola would want to go carbon neutral, and then your project might make up that entire portfolio of projects that they're supporting to go carbon neutral.
Okay. Makes sense. Okay. So that makes sense. So you're saying, to recap, because at the beginning you said that what you folks do is you're funding climate action, making it simple and engaging, and that's true. Like if I pay you one chunk of money, and you're a subscription service, right? So it's an ongoing thing, and then you're handling all of this stuff in a background of funding different kinds of projects and managing a portfolio and so on and so forth. So I guess the sort of follow-on question I had to that is, because when I've seen your ads or your website, I think, how much was it? You like £125 a week, right?
Yeah,
Is the sort of number maybe that you start off from, I think. But you sort of say you can become climate positive for 125 a week, which does seem like a really low amount. So how are you
yeah.
working that out?
Yeah, that's how the whole project started. I was just so frustrated by my own contributions to the planet. I was buying kind of like bamboo, cotton earbuds, and tiny, tiny, tiny things that meant to march us in the direction we're getting to. I was wondering what power a small amount of money could have, by funding climate solutions directly, and I'm finding out that £4.50, £5 a month could genuinely offset my own carbon footprint. Maybe some of the projects fall short a little bit. Let's say that the maths weren't as good as they needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're still compensating the majority of your carbon. We do a lot of things to overcompensate. It was absolutely insane. It is incredibly cheap to offset 14 tons, which is a lot higher than most estimations of your UK carbon footprint. It should be around
And this is
6
14
tons
tons
according to
is
your.
sort of your yearly carbon footprint in the UK, or
Yeah, yeah,
monthly?
yeah.
What is it? Yeah,
So
okay.
yeah, so the governments report carbon emissions based and other kind of greenhouse emissions based on your own country that you exist within.
Hmm.
But like anyone listening from the UK will know that we don't manufacture our own goods. The clothes on your back will not come from England, and so the UK government and most developed nations governments are looking at their carbon emissions coming down and going, look at how great we are. But all we're really doing is offloading to other nations. And so the 6.5 tons is where the UK government reports it. But that is really only like one part of the slice of the cake, really.
Yeah.
So we add in all the imported emissions, let's say your t-shirt manufactured in Turkey, and then we add all that up to around 8-9 tons, and then we add a bit more to kind of firmly put you in the climate positive kind of category. So
Okay.
there's a lot is being offset, yeah, but it is really cheap, and this is the highest standard of carbon offset, kind of highest caliber of project that's available. Prices will go up as kind of demand increases,
Sure.
but we can weather that storm when it
And is
comes
it
to it.
so cheap at the moment? Because, well, I mean, I'm supposed to use your own phrase because you said like you like the UK and other Western sort of countries exporting the problem, right? In a sense, but
Mm.
are you also exporting the solution? If you're like, is it so cheap because you're planting stuff and buying up land in places where at the moment is very cheap because the labor is so cheap and so on and so forth?
Yeah.
Because it strikes me that maybe 450 a month wouldn't even cut it to start doing the same thing here in the UK,
That's
right?
right. Yeah, and that £4.50 doesn't include that I just talked about in terms of the carbon offset. That doesn't include. We're also planting 12 trees in Madagascar and Nicaragua and Mozambique on top of that as well. It's pennies for some amazing climate action. So to plant a tree in the UK, like if you go on Ecologi and you're really passionate about bringing your kind of impact closer to home, then you can add some UK planted trees, and that's £3 a tree compared to like 10 cents a tree. And even £3 is the cheapest the UK in the UK I've ever seen. It's normally around £20.
Hmm.
But the one in the UK has done some really cool kind of layering of revenue models. Like they tap for birch syrup, and they've got other kind of ways of selling from that
Okay.
land.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not just planting, because this is the other thing, right? So what I don't know whether it's something that you do yourselves or maybe you trust in other organizations, but the thing is that you you can't just plant a tree and then walk away. And that's not really going to do much
Yeah.
maybe in the long or even medium term, right? They do need a lot of care, or either care, or is it making
Absolutely.
sure they're not, the deer don't come in and eat them. If we're talking about like here
Yeah.
in Scotland, for instance, you plant a tree and you just walk away, somebody's going to eat it off.
Absolutely.
Um, how is that handled? Are you sort of funding that as well, or is that then somebody
Yeah.
else's problem?
It's definitely somebody else's problem as well as ours. So it's ultimately kind of, I guess, our responsibility to making sure that we've sourced the right partners who are doing this properly, sustainably, properly planting in a way that means that these trees are going to last for well over 100 years. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, that's really important. And, when you say we plant a tree, well, plant a seed, for example, there's a big difference between planting 1 million seeds on one side of a hill in a valley to the other side of the valley. It could be life and death for 1 million
Yeah.
trees. It's
Yeah.
incredibly important. So yeah, we spent, the initial part of our project kickoff was sourcing the right partners. But my background isn't climate science. Up until now, we've been getting by having gold standards, having peer reviewed, excelling in what they do. So that's been really helpful. But now there's a lot of funding coming our way, so we're having to kind of step up a bit. So just in the last few weeks, we formed a climate committee, and this is like a volunteer group of industry experts and academics. Those are kind of atmospheric sciences and kind of actual ecology PhDs to come together to help develop like a really nice high impact, low risk strategy for ourselves,
Hmm.
as well as looking into our actual project developers to kind of give us that extra level of insight in our projects. We actually need to go visit these projects themselves, even though we see the reports, the auditors and everything and photos. We also need to be there, and then also it means we can communicate the story a lot better. People are wondering, like, where are there trees in Mozambique, and is that actually our tree, or is this some trees from a year ago that was planted by
Yes, yes,
Coca-Cola again?
exactly.
Yeah.
Because I mean, so first of all, how are you doing? Like, I mean, it looks like you're sort of growing, and you just said a bunch of money came your way. Is that because you raised money, or is it just because you're getting money, sort of people buying into the project?
Yeah, people buying into the projects is what I mean. It's like this sort of funding is people funding climate action and
Okay.
businesses. So we've got 12,000 climate positive people who are doing what I've just described. So kind of compensating carbon footprint.
Yeah.
And we've got 1,500 businesses on our climate positive workforce, and we're pretty proud of what we've done, really. So it was just a few months ago that we had only a £15,000 loan to get us to where we were a few months ago, which is 2 million trees and all sorts of things. And so over the last few months, we've got a couple of £100 just to get us going. And things have been good. I always, me and my co-founders always like wondered whether some really big kind of deep pocketed kind of tech kind of group would come out of Silicon Valley and just completely trounce any kind of growth, any attraction that we'd had. But it's been really satisfying to kind of be up there and can compete.
Yeah.
So
At the numbers you mentioned, you're sort of, I think you publish your numbers, so this isn't like maybe
it's all out there.
So you're sort of like, it's around £1 million a year of sort of income.
Yeah.
Not profit, right? But this is sort of like what you're getting from your subscribers. But obviously you're not a charity, right? So you're a for-profit organization that is purpose driven, I suppose, is the term people use a lot. How do you balance that out? Because obviously you need to pay yourselves salaries, you need to pay for whatever, you need to have some cash in the bank for a rainy day or for a pandemic, or how are you handling that side of it, and ensuring that going forwards you're not suddenly maybe the purpose gets forgotten a little bit, and suddenly it's
Absolutely.
all about that. Are you a B Corp, for example, or something similar?
So B Corp in progress. Like many kind of social enterprise kind of startups that are just getting started. We've just got someone to kind of help us with that. So the idea started off as a charity, and then we had this took some time out to kind of work out where we wanted to get to in like 7 or 10 years. And 10 years is a good one because that's our kind of carbon budget goal. And realize that we've got to go big on this one, because we really see an opportunity for a lot of people funding climate solutions. Let's say, for example, as many people got a subscription with us with Ecologi as they did with Netflix or Spotify. That's around 110, 150 million subscribers. At that point, it's around 11-12% of all greenhouse gas emissions avoided. And when the United Nations talks about like progress on 0.1%, and then there's an opportunity of 10-12%, it's formidable. And then there are at least 800 million people who could afford $7 or $8 a month. And so we wanted to start with that and realize, working backwards, that we can't get there as a charity. Like the risks are there. We don't know, it was just a couple of people. We don't know the people who wanted to kind of donate to us and keep things going. And so
I'm not particularly pro charity myself. I think I'm not against charities, but I would probably take the same route. But I'm curious to know your reasons. Why did you think it wouldn't work as a charity?
It's a familiarity, where I think if we'd run a charity before, then we'd be like, okay, so we can see how that gets going. But we didn't know anything about it. And the more we know now, it just wouldn't have kicked. We wouldn't have got it off the ground. And consequently, now we've got this kind of self-sustaining business model that is attractive to investors, which means that we're looking to kind of get another £2 million in a couple of months, let's say. But a charitable model would have never have got us there. Now, how do we make sure that we don't, how do we not veer off course of the mission? And that is the kind of the most important bit for me and the rest of the team. We're not in it for profit, and it pains us to say that we're organized as a for-profit, but we are ultimately to serve kind of our mission. And to kind of get there, we have to get there, super quick. And so what we're doing right now is baking in the sorts of kind of our purpose into our articles of association, which is kind of like your kind of formal papers that have to come with you for the duration, kind of our attitude to profit taking, and there's like an asset lock, and kind of the mission principles are all in there, and they can't change hands, that sort of thing. So we're doing everything we can do to put us in the lines of charity and then take us further. So the best charities in the world don't take as little profit as we do. Charities, especially in the UK, around about 30-40%. We're at the 12.5% mark. We'll have to add a 5% eventually, but we want to we want to go further than the best charities. Yeah. That's our way.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not in any way sort of against this approach. I think there's plenty of examples of organizations set up as charities who are frankly not very charitable, right? Or where sort of they've veered, of course. Yeah. I mean, especially in the UK in the last few years, there's been a lot of investigation into the big charities and so on. So ultimately, it's about the people running it rather than the structure.
Absolutely.
So I'll ask you one last thing, and then we can probably wrap up there. And this sort of maybe feels like maybe the wrong way around in terms of interview structure. But, you said your background isn't climate science, right? But so I was curious to know, what is your background and how did you get to where you are now, right? So what's been your career trajectory? And, if you weren't in climate, how did you switch?
Yeah, so I think tech was my kind of bridge. So I did computing as a degree, and then kind of started writing software for websites and apps and that sort of thing. And I'd always been like this kind of armchair environmentalist, just like constantly worried, not doing particularly much about it, and it was frustrating. And kind of realizing, I think when I chanced upon a resource called Project Drawdown, and it's got this amazing summary of all the climate solutions that are out there. The grand sum of all of them are around 30 years worth of kind of carbon damage that we can just roll back if we were to fund them. And so with the solutions out there, no technological breakthrough needed. It's simply a marketing exercise, with climate change needing just a bloody good kind of marketing campaign to say, look, we can fund these right now, and we'd reach this kind of climate change kind of stasis. And so tech platforms, marketing prowess, and this, my wife as a designer and illustrator and brand person, it was a really good combination. And we just got that started, and that's how, and it was a really good bridge, but no doubt risky.
So your background isn't in marketing, right? But what's been wrong? Why is your marketing working at the moment? And what sort of, because you said, like, I think you said it just, this thing just needed some good marketing if the solution's there. You sort of connecting things up. And I don't disagree with you, but what's failed so far, I suppose? Why hasn't this been done 30 years ago?
Yeah, it's because when you donate to charity, for example, or donate to plant a tree, you don't get enough back. And what we wanted to kind of really fix was that you kind of become really attached to the thing that you've just done. So you want to do it a month after and the month after that. And so you have this kind of grow your own forest kind of mechanic, and it's something that you love. And if you were to cancel, you'd essentially be killing off your forest that you've just grown. And so it's very sticky. And combine the kind of seeing the impact, like we have the photos of your actual trees that you've just planted, and kind of on the plan and that sort of thing. But it's the other aspect of just really knowing people are super skeptical. People are really skeptical about anything related to putting money in somewhere that they don't know where it's going. Carbon offsets is sketchy. And so we play on that and go, everything is transparent. So our financials, our board meeting minutes, it's all up there. And we combine that with just proper grassroots stuff, just being like normal people, rather than like a deep-pocketed kind of kind of one coming out of America, where it's exploded. We're just normal people trying to fix climate change, and then if it's for people by people, that's what people really love. They love that idea that it's, a mum and a dad like going like, let's attract all the rest of the families in the world,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
doing it like that. So it's that combination.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, and I'm glad you changed your mind about having a chat with me, because I know you were very busy. So I
Lovely stuff. It was
appreciate.
really good to do. Thank you, Richard.
Well, thank you so much. Best of luck with I mean, just on the transparency thing, I think that was a big thing that I noticed, and kind of one of the reasons I wanted to speak to you, because it is hard to work out where your money is going, even if you really put your research in. So I think that makes a lot of sense, what you sort of described there about being transparent. And I mean, of course, the proof is in the market, I suppose, but it makes sense to me. It's always
Excellent to hear.
Somebody's planting a tree at the other side of the world, and you're like, well, how do I know?
Yeah,
they're not just having a beer with my money, kind of thing.
yeah.
Anyway, I won't keep you any longer. Thank you very, very much. Best of luck with Ecologi. Thank you for listening. Please visit fataleria.blog to join our mailing list and help support our community and project. And if you like the music, please check out the Happy Quartet on Bandcamp. That's it for today.